God had not blessed them with children. One child was born, but it died. Grigory was fond of children and was not ashamed of showing it. When Adelaida Ivanovna had run away, Grigor took Dmitri, then a child of 3, combed his hair and washed him in a tub with his own hands, and looked after him for almost a year. Afterwards he had looked after Ivan and Aloysia, for which the general's widow had rewarded him with a slap in the face. But I've already related all that. The only happiness his own child had brought him had been in the anticipation of its birth. When it was born, his heart was stricken with grief and horror. The baby had 6 fingers. Grigory was so crushed by this that he was not only silent till the day of the christening, but kept away in the garden of the spring, and he spent 3 days digging the kitchen garden. The 3rd day was fixed for christening the baby. Meantime, Grigory had reached a conclusion. Going into the cottage where the clergy were assembled and the visitors had arrived, including Fyodor Pavlovich, who was to stand godfather, he suddenly announced that the baby ought not to be christened at all. He announced this quietly, briefly speaking through his teeth and gazing with dull intentness at the priest. "Why not?" asked the priest, with good-humored surprise. "Because it's a dragon," muttered Grigory. "A dragon? What dragon?" Grigory did not speak for some time. "It's a confusion of nature," he muttered vaguely, but firmly, obviously unwilling to say more. They laughed and, of course, christened the baby. Grigory prayed earnestly at first at the font, but his opinion of the newborn child remained unchanged. Yet he did not interfere in any way. As long as the sickly infant lived, he scarcely looked at it, tried indeed not to notice it, and for the most part kept out of the cottage. But when at the end of a fortnight the baby died of thrush, he himself laid the child in its little coffin, looked at it in profound grief, and when they were filling up the shallow little grave, he fell on his knees and bowed down to the earth. He did not for years afterwards mention his child, nor did Marfa speak of the baby before him, and even if Grigory were not present, she never spoke of it above a whisper. Marfa observed that from the day of the burial he devoted himself to religion and took to reading the lives of the saints, for the most part sitting silent and in silence, and always putting on his big, round, silver-rimmed spectacles. He rarely read aloud, only perhaps during Lent. He was fond of the book of Job, and had somehow got hold of a copy of the discourses and sermons of our godly father Isaac the Syrian, which he had read persistently for years together, understanding practically nothing of it, but perhaps prizing and loving it the more for that. Of late he had begun to listen to the doctrines of the sect of flagellants settled in the neighborhood. He was evidently shaken by them, but judged it unfitting to go over to the new faith. His habit of edifying reading gave him an expression of still greater gravity.